All right. Hello, this is Dave from the Four Geeks and a Microphone podcast, joined live with Andy Simon. Hello, Andy. How are you doing?
Hello, Dave. I am very well, although a little bit tired on this morning day.
That happens after a long weekend of partying like you college kids do.
Oh well, I am located in Mankato, and that's pretty much what we do 24/7. Schoolwork?
That's
What is
great.
schoolwork? Schoolwork is let's study this alcoholic bottle and all of its contents and its effect on me.
That's what I hear.
In between watching
So,
movies, of course. Top
of
priority.
course. Speaking of movies, that's what we're here today. We're here to discuss the Godzilla movie that just came out. And since you are the biggest Godzilla fanboy I know, I figured you'd be the perfect person to talk about the movie with.
Rightio on that. I've actually been rewatching the Godzilla movies in preparation for the May 16th release, and then all these new titles are coming to Blu-ray, and so I'm picking them up and I'm watching them, and I'm like, they look so beautiful and in widescreen, and I'm watching it with Japanese English subtitles the way it properly should be. It's really fun to be a Godzilla fan right now and to just like totally re-immerse yourself in the previous 29 Godzilla. Well, 28 proper good ones, and then the 29th is that one that you like to continually tease me by saying is the best of the bunch.
All I know is that you told me it was the best Godzilla movie that America had ever made. So,
I will allow you to be say that it's the last time you mention the 98 disaster, and let's just move on from the 98 film, yeah?
okay, let's move on. So, with the new movie, we have a whole new introduction to Godzilla. They basically went back to the start of the story and tried to rebring the monster to life in a modern time. What do you think they did right? What do you think they did wrong, if anything?
Well, as far as like origin story is concerned, I'm very the way that they decided to tackle it, which is in the trailer, so I don't consider it too much of a spoiler. But the fact that all the testings in the 1950s wasn't actually it was testing. It was more like, hey, we're gonna detonate this to destroy Godzilla. I thought that was very, very interesting. So as far as setting up the character as this indestructible force that is being like trying to keep secret, I thought that was really cool.
Okay. Well, what about in the original movie? Godzilla was actually supposed to be like the personification of man's fear of nuclear weapons and the destructive power that they could have on the world. And Godzilla was like that. It was supposed to be that fear manifest. How do you think they did portraying that aspect of Godzilla in the new movie?
I think that was nearly non-existent. I think that the nuclear energy was still a part of this narrative, in so much as the military trying to use it as a weapon, which I thought was kind of humorous. Hey, let's fight this monster that's made out of radiation with nuclear energy. That makes a lot of sense. But Godzilla, the very few times that we get to see the King of Monsters, is more portrayed as anti-hero and doesn't. With the exception of maybe like Ken Watanabe's character mentioning nuclear weapons, there is no correlation with the original 54 Godzilla's message and themes and the 2014 legendary Godzilla. Like, he represents nothing other than a force of nature bringing balance.
Okay.
Do you agree? You kind of see that?
I do. And I don't know. That's that actually one of the things you brought up is one of the problems I had with the movie, because while I thought it was a good movie, I wouldn't say it was a great movie.
No, I totally agree.
Because with this movie, I mean, one, you only see Godzilla a very, very little bit of time in the movie, and most of it's at the end.
Yep.
And even then, it's mostly like obscured views. He's behind part of a building, or there's a big cloud of smoke, or you see him on the TV screen behind one of the actors who happens to be talking for some reason at that point.
Yes, no. Allow me to interject here. Okay, so like last year's Pacific Rim is people talk about that all the time now, and I think that was one of those scenarios where the monsters and robots are so obscured by rain and water and buildings that I could barely tell what the hell was going on. Now, in the case of this film, yes, Godzilla is obscured by rain, water, smoke, etc., and like up until the nighttime climax. There's plenty of beautiful money shots, and I'm actually able to see the King of Monsters in his full 108-meter glory in several shots. And so the frustration aside from being not given the beauty of Godzilla fighting in daylight and all that stuff, that I felt very uh, happy slash validated when you get to see him like full on and the ending.
Okay.
Like, I mean, there's
Well,
more shots of him, like the money shots. There's more money shots of Godzilla in the end than there are in like the first hour and a half.
there were really only two really cool shots in the entire movie of Godzilla, I think. The first one is when when his tail lights up from tip all the way up
Yes.
to his head when he breathes for the first time. That was awesome. The second shot is, of course, the finale when he is finally killing the monster he's fighting against. Those two shots, I think, really were the best shots of the entire movie of Godzilla. Other than that, they really obscured him a lot. The other problem I kind of had with the movie, and let me know if I'm on the same page as you on this, is the fact that I didn't really care about any of the characters, other than Bryan Cranston, who basically the entire trailer is his entire role in the movie. Uh, there's nobody who dies in the entire movie who I think even has a chance of dying. I never felt threatened. I never felt that any of the characters had any type of risk to their life, not even once. So I really didn't care about any of the characters or their journey. They were almost superfluous, and you could have basically went from the explanation at the beginning about what all those nuclear tests in the Pacific were, to the destruction of the nuclear power plant, to the end of the movie, and you wouldn't have missed anything. I don't think. What do you think on that?
I nearly completely agree with you. Um, I have to give the movie kudos for trying to make a character-driven Godzilla story that wants us to be invested in these characters, but they do a piss poor job. Um, I think Joe Brody is Joe Bryan Cranston or Aaron.
Uh,
Anyways, what?
Bryan Cranston was Joe, I think.
Okay, Ford Brody. That
Yes.
is
That was Aaron Taylor Johnson.
okay. My frustration about him is that he is so ineffectual to the actual plot. There are so many times where he uh, tries to do something only to not succeed, tries to do something, not succeed. That happens maybe 3 times. The only time he actually does something that matters is when he lets an explosion go off somewhere important. And even then, Godzilla could have totally taken care of that particular problem. So it, um, these guys just aren't. You don't care enough about them because they're not
No.
properly developed. Even though the script feels like it kind of seems to be boasting, like, look at these really interesting characters, even though they're not really all that interesting.
Well, and you know what I realized later is that when I walked out of the movie, I had a very kind of flat feeling. I was like, well, it was a good movie, but I really didn't care about anybody in the movie. And I realized after I had looked up who was part of the movie, who directed it, and who was the screenwriter and that type of stuff,
Screenwriters.
that the director is the same guy who directed the movie Monsters.
Yep.
And that movie, I walked away from with the exact same feeling of, oh, it was a good movie, but I didn't really care about any of the characters. So I'm wondering if it was maybe kind of almost his style that just didn't connect with me, or maybe his style combined with the screenwriting that didn't connect with me. But I don't know, the movie just felt a little flat, and it just wasn't quite as good as I was hoping it to be. I wanted it to either be more of really a drama about the people who were there and have them play a significant role in the movie, or I wanted it to be a monster movie. I wanted it to be Godzilla.
Agreed. I mean, part of me, like I said, part of me wants to compliment the movie for trying to do a human drama, but another, the geek part of me is just like, you have a $160 million budget. Give me 85% Godzilla, please. Thank you very much.
Yep.
I am paying you this money. Like the first time I saw it, I went to go see IMAX, so I paid $16.25.
Oof.
I want for my money Godzilla. Thank you very much. So every single time Gareth Edwards wants to pull a Jaws on us, and like give you a brief glimpse. Okay, guess what? Tease is over. You have to wait another 30 minutes. Brief glimpse. I was like, damn you! I want my Godzilla.
Yep.
Um.
Well, and that's one thing that, like you brought up Pacific Rim earlier. That's one thing that I think Pacific Rim actually did well, in that it delivered. It gave you monsters. It gave you giant robots. And yeah, there were some times where they were a little obscured by rain or whatever, but I've seen the movie several times, and I didn't have a problem following the action in that movie. I also didn't feel like the cast were superfluous like I did in Godzilla. They felt like they had parts to do, and they had roles to play, and they were fairly significant roles. So I think that movie did a much better job of connecting to the human side of things than Godzilla did, even though a lot of people say that it's not as good of a movie as Godzilla is.
Well, first, both movies have different goals. Guillermo's Pacific Rim is just pure full-on action / homage. Godzilla is trying to make him relevant again. The Japanese have written off Godzilla. Nobody cares about that anymore in Japan. In America, it just looks at Godzilla as, this cartoon figure that slides with his tail to fight Megalon, So the importance of Gareth Edwards' Godzilla is just to say, look, Godzilla is actually a lean, mean fighting machine, and he's worthy of becoming a cultural icon again.
Well, I don't know. I don't know if I agree with that, though. I mean, because if they really wanted to make him a cultural icon, wouldn't they want to play more up on the fears that nuclear weapons, ignite in all of us? Wouldn't they want to, put more of like the morality tale of Godzilla back into the story, instead of kind of half-heartedly going to a monster movie and half-heartedly going to a human drama and not really doing either very well?
This is going to just sound mean, but I think this movie is the exact well-made for this contemporary general audience. I don't think audiences these days care enough, let alone want Godzilla to be a personification of anything. Generally, people just don't want to use their brains, and they'll just. I think this script, although you and I as people are very invested in these movies, I think you and I will have many thoughts about it. But you just pull 15 people who just walked out of Godzilla, and I'm sure they probably thought it was as nuanced as a Christopher Nolan movie.
Yeah, probably.
Okay, and also on popular opinion, I just want to go back to characters for a moment. I feel, reading all these reviews and listening to other people, that I am probably the only person to just feel totally unaffected by Bryan Cranston in the film. Like, he is a walking cliche. I
agree.
With the exception of the 2 shots you see in the trailer of him, and at the nuclear power plant in Janjira, holding, putting his hand to his mouth because of the horrible events that are happening to him. That's emotional. That was, emotional investment right there.
Yep.
But for the rest of the movie, I've seen the movie 3 times now, and I usually walk out to go use the bathroom or get a refill of popcorn during his scenes, because there's nothing important to it. There's nothing that pulls me into it.
Well, and that's part of the problem I think I had with some of the character stuff, is that, so Ford Brody, he is this, what is he, a Navy guy, I think?
All I know is that he knows how to dismantle bombs.
Yeah,
quickly.
he's
60 seconds.
DTech. So what he does is, his role is really just accidental. He doesn't go out seeking to, avenge his father's death, really. He doesn't go out to, kind of stop the monster. He's just like,
my dad's died. I'm
to, Yeah, I need to get back to San Francisco. My wife is there, and you guys are looking for need some help or something. Oh, I can't get
Actually,
on the
Dave,
plane unless I can do something. I can disarm a bomb. How about that? Does that help? I
Dave,
mean,
like you okay, so the mission is to get back to his wife and son, but I never once feel like it. I feel like he's putting more like you know what? I do need to get back to San Francisco, but duty calls, so I'm going to go do this thing. Like I feel like he cares more about not doing it, being part of the military and being ineffectual than actually going to his wife and son like he keeps saying he should.
yeah. Well, and that's part of the problem is that the writing of the characters is so weak at times that you just don't care because their motivations are unclear. Their motivations are non-existent half the time, and they don't really affect the plot in any significant way. Like I said, unlike Pacific Rim, which I'll probably be comparing this to a few more times, in Pacific Rim, the characters, while they are cliched a little bit, they matter to the story.
Yes,
You know,
because
they
they are literally in the fight, as in they are literally in the frickin' suits. So how more could you be invested in the story there?
exactly, which is one of the benefits I think that movie had over Godzilla, and they could have done Godzilla differently, where the humans had a significant part to play, other than really nothing, because all of their ideas didn't work. So I don't know.
I I feel a lot of okay, but there's four or five screenwriters who worked on Godzilla at one point or another, and I feel a lot of them just had conflicting ideas and not exactly confident in how to mesh those ideas together, let alone make a movie um, that's really really good. So I think they settled on something that this makes sense. I think so. Let's just make this production draft.
All right. Well, you went to school for screenwriting. You know, what are your thoughts on the actual script, on the actual what we saw on screen? I mean, do you think that this really was the best that they could do, or do you think that somebody should have stepped in and really gotten rid of stuff or tried to make things better in some way?
Yes, they. This is not the best they could have done, as I think we've established in the last couple minutes. Yes, it does need a lot more retooling. Out of 100%, I think right now it's kind of like at a 68 as far as as good as it can be. Um, I just feel like dialogue needs to be retooled because there's way too much exposition. I feel that characters, as you keep saying, need improved motivation or at least reiterated motivation. I feel um, personally annoyed about the lack of Godzilla because he's a third character essentially. The human cast takes up most of the screen time, and then the Mutos take up the second most screen time. It should have just been named Mutos because of how often the camera lingers on them instead of the big G.
Yeah.
So the film, because of the direction they chose of doing the withholding the the main event until the climax, um, they just needed to make sure that they had a human story that would compensate for the lack of the main event, and they just didn't really accomplish that, which I thought is quite miraculous considering that they had David Goyer and Frank Darabont as two people who are very good, in my opinion, with conveying human emotion, and they didn't. They kind of dropped the ball. Even though apparently Gareth Edwards attributes a lot of what does succeed character-wise to Darabont.
Hmm.
I
I
don't know. I
don't
feel
know.
like I'm kind of
See,
rambling here.
a little bit. Well, um, no, David Goyer is one of those writers that is really hit or miss for me. And I know that we're not going to get into it too much here, but I don't particularly care for the third Batman movie. Whereas the first two that he, did screenplays or stories for were amazing. The third one I thought, not so much. Man of Steel, I didn't really care for it so much. So he's really hit or miss for me, and I think that you know, I can see now that you mentioned that yeah, I can see some of his hand in this movie, which probably didn't help this movie for me anyway.
Okay, well let me put it this way. In the Dark Knight trilogy, Man of Steel, when these characters speak, I feel that these are characters that exist and they are speaking those sentences that they would say. When I watch Godzilla, I do not feel human beings speaking. I feel the hand of the writer. I feel exposition. I feel I need to say this so we can get to this next point. You
I
get
see
that?
what you're saying. I get what you're saying now. Yeah, and I get that completely with these movies, and I'll even give him credit for the other movies that I mentioned. You know, when the characters speak, you're right. It does feel like they're speaking. It's not the hand of the writer speaking. So,
I knew once I talk enough, I finally get to the point I'm trying to make.
and eventually, I'll drag it out of you, kicking and screaming if I need to. So. Overall,
2-hour podcast, and then finally, like, so did you like the movie, Andy? Yes. One word, Andy. One word. Okay.
So, did you like the movie, Andy?
Sorta.
So you give it like a what, 3, 4 out of 5 type of thing?
Yeah, 3.5 out of 5.
Yeah, I think if they had gone more monster movie, or had gotten a better writer to do the human drama side of things, it would have been a much better movie. For me, it was basically a 3 out of 5, right down the middle.
I think my higher score is just attributed to my Godzilla fandom. Like I could go on and on about complaining about particular things, like maybe another 20 minutes on the Godzilla suit design and how much his feet just bug me.
See, and I actually just to touch on that a little bit, I thought that the design of Godzilla was really good because I like the fact that the lower half of him looked like the guy in the suit from the classic Godzilla movies.
Yeah.
And I liked how they did the head, how they changed the head so that it didn't look like the guy in the suit. It looked like a lizard head, almost akin to the 1998 movie, but better done.
Okay, so the Honolulu big reveal.
Yep.
One shot. When you get to his face, he looks like a freaking crocodile / bear hybrid, and it's just not pretty. And okay, I don't want to be one of those people who bitches about his weight, but because I'm used to Godzilla being fat. The whole Heisei era from 1984 to 1995, he's a big chubby dude. But give me arms to compensate for it. Like when I look at Godzilla, I think about that film Meet the Robinsons with the T-Rex. I can't reach them because of my little arms. So like when he finally fights the Mutos, I'm kind of like, are you sure you can reach them, Godzilla? Just like try to body swamp them or something.
Yeah, but you have to admit, at least from my perspective, I thought the special effects on both the Mutus and Godzilla were really, really well done, and probably some of the best special effects I'd seen in a long time in a movie, because they actually did feel like they were part of the environment, which you can't say that with a lot of movies, even like a lot of high-budget movies.
I will say that I had more emotion from the 3 digital characters than I did from any of the human characters. And I will give you 2 examples.
Okay.
After Godzilla is victorious at one point, there is a moment where Godzilla is very exhausted and he kind of just like does a deep exhale.
Yep.
Okay, that was like, whoa, that's some really good animation there. I feel this character. And the second part is this wide shot of the 2 Mutos communicating and exchanging the warhead or something. I think it's warhead, right? At that point.
Yeah, that was the warhead at that point.
They're just kind of like communication at each other. I really hate this constant use of these 2 creatures like trying to mate, because I feel like I see that in all these new monster movies in the last decade. But just that moment between them, even though they're the antagonists, I was like, oh, this is really sweet.
Yeah, no, they did an amazing job on those special effects. So, but I think that's about all we have to say on that for now. So, do you have any last things you want to add or anything?
No, because we'll try to keep this podcast short. So I probably shouldn't add more, other than the sequel has officially been commissioned, and you can, even despite my 3.5 grade, you can bet your ass I'm going to be there opening night.
Yeah, same here. I enjoyed the movie enough where I'd go see a sequel, and hopefully they'd work out the bugs from the first one to make the second one better. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see.
Will you be purchasing the Blu-ray when that comes out? I guess
Likely.
that's the. Yeah. Naturally, I am, of course. I have to complete my collection. I even own the '98 movie on Blu-ray, so I must continue.
Now it is the second best American-made Godzilla movie ever, right?
Yes, Dave. Yes, you're always right.
I know. Just get used to it. So, all right. Well, I guess that's it for now. Thank you for listening to our podcast, and we hope to see you and hear from you again soon.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Yep. Bye.